I signed the final paper with shaking hands, staring at the house keys resting on the table, proof that I had made it. At just 19, I had built a business from nothing, paid off crushing debts, and bought a home no one believed I deserved. But what nobody saw was the text message lighting up my phone at that exact moment. Enjoy the house while you can. You don't know the truth yet. My chest tightened, my fingers froze above the keys, because that message came from the one person who had been beside me since day one, the person who knew every secret, every late-night panic attack, every sacrifice I had made to reach that moment. And what they were about to reveal would destroy everything I had built. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is my story of betrayal, and if you've ever trusted the wrong person, hit that subscribe button because you are not alone. Here is how it happened. I was reading comments on my YouTube videos the other day, and I realized I wasn't the only one who had a story like this. So many people wrote about being betrayed by the very people who clapped the loudest when they succeeded. People who smiled at your wins, but secretly waited for you to fall. And when I read those words, I felt something crack open inside me again, because my story didn't start with success. It started with humiliation. I was 17 when my life first collapsed. My father's small shop had failed after years of struggling. Debt collectors started coming to our house, sometimes politely, sometimes banging on the door like they owned us. I still remember my mother whispering to me one night, thinking I was asleep, "We might lose the house." That sentence changed something inside me forever. I wasn't scared of being poor. I was scared of watching my parents slowly break. So while my friends worried about exams, parties, and crushes, I was sitting late at night searching for ways to make money online. Drop shipping, freelancing, crypto, affiliate marketing. Most of it was scams. Some were impossible. All of them felt overwhelming. But one night at 2:37 a.m., I stumbled onto something that felt different. It was a simple idea. Start a small digital service business. No inventory, no huge investment, just skill, hustle, and consistency. The problem? I had no skills. None. No experience, no connections, no money. Just desperation. So I did something embarrassing. I lied. I created a fake portfolio using free sample designs, watched hundreds of tutorials, and spent 2 weeks learning just enough to convince people I knew what I was doing. Then I sent my first message to a potential client. My hands were shaking so badly I almost couldn't press send. They replied within 10 minutes. "Can you deliver in 3 days?" I typed back, "Of course." Then I stared at the screen thinking, I have no idea how to do this. For the next 72 hours, I didn't sleep. I watched tutorials nonstop, practiced, failed, tried again. When I finally delivered the work, I expected anger. Instead, the client replied, "This is great. I'd like to work with you long term." I cried that night, not because of the money, because for the first time, I felt hope. Within 6 months, I was making more than my father had ever earned in his shop. I paid off small debts quietly. I started covering household bills without telling my parents where the money came from. They just thought I was doing online work. They didn't know I was working 14 hours a day, skipping meals, barely sleeping. They definitely didn't know about the one person who became my biggest supporter during that time. The one person who would later become my biggest nightmare. Her name was Sarah. We met in a business forum online. She was confident, smart, and ambitious, the kind of person who talked like success was already hers. She believed in me before anyone else did. When I doubted myself, she said, "You're not lucky, you're dangerous, you just don't know it yet." We started talking every day, then working together, then planning bigger dreams. She told me we could build an agency together, scale it, become unstoppable. At 18, I trusted her completely because when you're young and struggling, belief feels like love, and I mistook her support for loyalty. By 19, everything changed fast. Our business exploded, clients multiplied, money started flowing. For the first time in my life, I felt powerful. I paid off small debts family quietly. Then, 1 year after starting, I bought a small house. I thought it was the happiest day of my life. Sarah celebrated with me. She said she was proud. She hugged me and whispered, "We did it." But that night, while holding my new house keys, I received the message that would shatter everything. Check your business account right now. My heart dropped because when I logged in, the balance showed something impossible, 0, and beneath it, a transaction history that made my blood run cold. Every dollar we had earned was gone, and there was only one person who could have taken it: Sarah. The first thing I felt wasn't anger, it was disbelief. I kept refreshing the screen over and over, like maybe the numbers would magically reappear, like maybe it was some kind of technical glitch, like maybe I was still safe. But the balance didn't change. 0. Every single payment from clients over the past 3 months, gone. Savings, emergency funds, even the money I had set aside for my parents' medical bills, all wiped out in one silent, brutal moment. My hands started trembling so badly I had to put my phone down because deep down, I already knew the truth. Only 2 people had access to that account: me and Sarah. I called her immediately, once, twice, 10 times, straight to voicemail. Each unanswered call felt like another piece of reality snapping into place, like a slow, horrifying puzzle completing itself. I opened our chat. My last message to her was from just a few hours earlier. "I got the house keys today." She had replied with a heart emoji. That tiny red heart suddenly felt like a knife. Then I noticed something that made my stomach drop even further. Her profile picture was gone. Status: offline. Our shared project folder: deleted. Access revoked. Every digital trace of her disappearing in real time. That was the moment it hit me. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was planned. Carefully, coldly, completely. I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe properly, couldn't even process the scale of what had just happened. Because it wasn't just money she had taken. It was years of sacrifice, nights without sleep, meals skipped, dreams built piece by piece, all stolen in seconds. My mother walked into my room then, smiling softly. "You look tired," she said. "You've been working too much. Come eat something." I stared at her, trying to keep my face steady. Because how could I tell her? How could I say that everything I had fought for, everything that had finally brought peace to our family, was gone? So I forced a smile. "I'll come in a minute," I whispered. She nodded and left. The moment the door closed, I broke. I sank to the floor and cried in a way I hadn't cried since I was a child. Not loudly, not dramatically, just silent tears falling endlessly, like something inside me had shattered beyond repair. For hours, I sat there replaying every memory of Sarah, every late-night call, every business plan, every promise, every "I believe in you." And suddenly, small details started to resurface, things I had ignored before, like how she always insisted on handling the financial side, how she encouraged me to focus only on clients and growth, how she said, "Don't stress about the numbers, I've got it covered." At the time, it had felt like support. Now it felt like manipulation, like she had been slowly positioning herself for this moment all along. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. My heart jumped. I opened it immediately. It was her. "Don't try to contact me again." That was it. No explanation, no apology, nothing. Just one cold sentence. I typed back instantly. "Why?" The typing indicator appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Each second felt like torture. Finally, her reply came. "Because this business was never yours alone." I stared at the words, unable to comprehend them. "What are you talking about?" I typed. Her next message arrived. "You were just the face. I did the real work." My hands clenched so tightly my knuckles turned white. That wasn't true. It couldn't be. I had built the client base. I had worked nonstop. I had sacrificed everything. But before I could reply again, another message came. "And honestly, you would have lost it eventually anyway." That sentence hit harder than anything else because it wasn't just betrayal, it was contempt. Like she never respected me at all, like all those years of support had been an act. Then came the final message. "You should be grateful I stayed this long." After that, she blocked me. Everywhere. Phone, social media, business platforms, gone. Completely. I sat there staring at the empty chat screen. My chest felt hollow, not just because I had lost money, but because I had lost someone I trusted completely, someone who knew my deepest fears, someone who had watched me fight through my darkest moments. And in the end, she had used that trust as a weapon. The next morning, reality hit in full force. Clients started messaging, asking about delayed payments, why invoices weren't being processed, why their contracts suddenly looked invalid. Because Sarah hadn't just taken the money, she had taken control of multiple operational systems, and now everything was collapsing at once. Within days, contracts started getting canceled, reputation started crumbling, income streams vanished. The business I had spent 2 years building was dying in front of my eyes, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. The worst part? I couldn't even tell my parents because they had finally started sleeping peacefully again. For the first time in years, there were no debt collectors at the door, no whispered worries at night, no tension in the house. I couldn't bring myself to take that peace from them, so I carried the burden alone, pretending everything was fine, smiling at dinner, while inside, I felt like I was drowning. Weeks passed. I barely slept, barely ate. Every day felt like walking through thick fog. I stopped replying to friends, stopped posting online, stopped believing in myself, because one thought kept repeating in my head. What if she was right? What if I wasn't strong enough to build it again? What if everything I achieved had just been luck? What if this was the end of my story? One night, I opened the drawer where I kept the house keys. I held them in my palms, staring at them under the dim light. They suddenly felt heavy, almost meaningless. Because what was the point of owning a house if everything else in my life had collapsed? And for the first time, a terrifying thought crossed my mind. Maybe I should just give up. But then, as I sat there in silence, my phone vibrated again. A notification from an unknown email. Subject line, "We need to talk about Sarah." My heart stopped because the sender wasn't a client. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone who claimed they had been watching Sarah for months. And what they wrote next made me realize this betrayal was far bigger than I ever imagined. I stared at the subject line for a long time before opening it. "We need to talk about Sarah." My first reaction was fear, not curiosity, because when you've just been betrayed at that level, your trust doesn't just crack, it shatters completely. Every unknown message feels like a threat, every unfamiliar name like another potential trap. For a moment, I considered deleting the email without reading it, but something inside me, maybe instinct, maybe desperation, told me I couldn't ignore it. So I opened it. The email was short, almost disturbingly calm. It read, "I don't know you personally, but I know what happened to your business, and I know Sarah didn't act alone." My chest tightened instantly. Not alone. The words made my pulse quicken. I kept reading. "She has done this before. You are not the first person she's partnered with, and not the first one she's destroyed." My hands went cold because until that moment, I had been trying to understand why she betrayed me. But this email suggested something much worse. It wasn't personal, it was a pattern. The sender signed the email with a name I didn't recognize, Daniel. Below it was a single line: "If you want proof, reply. But be careful, she monitors people who try to expose her." I felt a chill run through me. Monitors? Expose? This suddenly sounded bigger than a business dispute. It sounded dangerous. For several minutes, I just sat there staring at the screen, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to ignore it completely, to walk away from everything, to just rebuild quietly and never look back. But another part of me, the part still burning with anger and confusion, needed answers. Because without them, I knew one thing for sure: I would never be able to trust myself again. So I replied. Just 2 words: "Show me." My finger hovered over the send button for a few seconds. Then I pressed it, and everything changed. The reply came within minutes, as if Daniel had been waiting. Attached to the email were several files: contracts, screenshots, bank statements, chat logs. At first, I couldn't even process what I was seeing, but as I started reading carefully, a horrifying picture began to form. 2 years ago, Sarah had partnered with another young entrepreneur, a 22-year-old named Amir. He had built a successful e-commerce brand. He trusted her to manage operations, just like I did. 6 months later, his business account was drained, exactly like mine. And then she disappeared. No explanation, no trace. I felt sick because the pattern was identical. Same strategy, same manipulation, same betrayal. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't desperation. It was intentional, cold, calculated, repeated. But the worst part wasn't even that. It was the chat screenshots Daniel had included. Messages between Sarah and someone else, a third person, someone I had never heard of. In one message, Sarah wrote, "He's perfect, hardworking, naive, doesn't question anything." I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach because I knew exactly who she was talking about: me. Another message from the third person read, "How long before you move?" Sarah replied, "Soon, just waiting until the business hits peak revenue." My breathing became shallow. Every word confirmed what I had feared most. She had never been my partner, never my supporter, never my friend. From the beginning, I had been a target. My hands were shaking so badly I had to stop reading for a moment, because it wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was humiliation. The realization that someone had studied my personality, gained my trust, and used my dreams as part of a long-term plan. It made me question everything. Every conversation, every laugh, every encouraging word. Were any of them real, or was it all just performance? Then I noticed something that made my heart start pounding again. The third person in those chats wasn't just advising her, they were coordinating with her, sharing financial strategies, discussing exit timing, even planning how to avoid legal consequences. This wasn't a solo betrayal, it was organized. I scrolled to the last screenshot, and what I saw there froze my blood. The third person wrote, "Once you finish this one, take a break. You've done 3 in 2 years." 3. Not 1, not 2, 3 victims. I realized then I wasn't just unlucky, I was part of a pattern. I immediately replied to Daniel, "Who is the other person?" The answer came quickly. "I don't know their real identity, but I know they're still working together." My heart sunk because that meant something terrifying. Even after taking everything from me, Sarah hadn't stopped. She was probably already targeting someone new. Then Daniel wrote something that made my pulse spike even more. "And I think she's planning to come back." I stared at the message, confused. "Come back?" I typed. His reply was immediate. "Yes, she always does." I felt a cold wave of dread. "Why would she come back?" I asked. There was a long pause before his response. When it finally came, it made my hands go numb. "Because she never leaves empty-handed." I didn't understand at first. She had already taken all the money, destroyed the business, ruined my reputation. What else could she possibly want? Then Daniel sent one final line. "She knows about your house." The words hit me like a lightning strike because suddenly everything made terrifying sense. The message she had sent the night I got the keys, "Enjoy the house while you can." It wasn't just a cruel comment, it was a warning. My chest tightened as fear began to replace anger, because if she was willing to destroy my business without hesitation, what would she do next? And more importantly, how much did she really know about my life, my family, my finances, my vulnerabilities? That night, for the first time since the betrayal, I didn't just feel hurt, I felt unsafe. Like I wasn't just dealing with a former partner, but with someone far more dangerous. Someone who didn't see people as human beings, only as opportunities. I locked my doors twice before going to bed, checked my windows repeatedly, and even then, I barely slept, because one question kept echoing in my mind. If she was planning to come back, what was she coming back for? The answer came sooner than I expected, because the very next morning, I received a legal notice that made my entire world spin. Sarah wasn't just done with me. She was about to take something far worse than money. She was coming for my house. The envelope arrived just after noon. Plain white. No return address. It looked harmless, almost ordinary. But the moment I saw the official legal stamp on the corner, my stomach dropped. Because deep down, I already knew. This was from her. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a formal legal notice. Cold, precise, ruthless. The words blurred for a moment before I forced myself to read them carefully. And when I did, it felt like the ground disappeared beneath my feet. Sarah was claiming legal ownership of part of my business assets, and because the house had been purchased using business funds, she was demanding partial ownership of the property. My property, the house I had bought for my parents, the house that symbolized every sacrifice I had made. She was trying to take it from me. I sank into the chair, unable to breathe properly. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was war. Calculated, strategic, relentless. She wasn't satisfied with taking the money. She wanted everything. The notice stated she had already filed documentation claiming she was a co-founder with equal financial rights. And the worst part? Technically, she wasn't lying, because in my naive trust, I had registered parts of the business jointly under both our names. At the time, it had felt like loyalty, like partnership, like fairness. Now, it felt like a fatal mistake. My chest tightened with panic. If she succeeded, my parents could lose the house. Everything I had built could collapse completely, and I would have no way to stop it. For hours I sat there frozen, not crying, not thinking, just staring at the paper in my hands. Because this wasn't just another setback. This was the kind of situation that destroys people permanently, financially, emotionally, mentally. Then my mother knocked on my door. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. "You've been very quiet lately." I forced a smile again, but this time it felt impossible to hold, because how much longer could I hide this? How much longer could I carry this alone? I almost told her. The words were right there pressing against my throat, but I stopped myself, because I couldn't bear to see fear return to her eyes, not after everything we had already survived. So I simply said, "I'm just tired." She nodded, but I could see the worry in her face, and that hurt even more. That night I called Daniel for the first time. His voice was calm, steady, almost like someone who had been through this before. "I was wondering when she'd make her move," he said quietly. My heart pounded. "You knew she would do this?" I asked. "Yes," he replied. "She always escalates." The certainty in his voice chilled me because it meant this was predictable, a routine for her, a strategy she had perfected. Daniel explained something that made my stomach twist. Sarah's method wasn't just to steal money, it was to gain legal leverage first, build trust, create joint ownership, then strike. So even if victims tried to fight back, they were already trapped, legally, financially, psychologically. "Why are you helping me?" I finally asked him. There was a long pause. Then he answered quietly, "Because she destroyed someone I love." His voice cracked slightly on the last word, and in that moment, I realized he wasn't just an observer, he was another survivor. He told me his younger sister had been Sarah's first known partner. She had trusted her completely, worked day and night to build their business. Then one morning, everything vanished, just like mine. The betrayal had broken her so deeply she never recovered. She quit entrepreneurship entirely, lost her confidence, lost her dreams. Even now, years later, she struggled with anxiety. Listening to him, something inside me shifted. Because for weeks I had been drowning in self-blame, thinking I was weak, stupid, naive. But now I realized something crucial. This wasn't about weakness. It was about manipulation, about someone skilled at exploiting trust, and I wasn't alone. "Can I fight this legally?" I asked him. He didn't answer immediately. Then he said carefully, "Yes, but it won't be easy." My heart sank slightly. Why? Because she plans for every scenario. She always leaves herself protected. He explained that Sarah was extremely careful with documentation. She kept records showing shared decision-making, shared financial involvement, shared responsibilities. On paper, it would look like a normal partnership dispute, not fraud, not betrayal, just a legal disagreement, which made proving the truth incredibly difficult. For the first time since receiving the notice, I felt real fear, not just emotional pain, but the terrifying possibility that she might actually win, that I might lose everything, even after surviving her betrayal. "What should I do?" I whispered. Daniel's voice became firm. "You need to stop thinking like a victim," he said. "You need to start thinking like someone fighting back." The words hit me hard because until that moment, I had been surviving, not resisting. He continued, "She's powerful because people stay silent. They walk away broken. They never challenge her. But if someone finally stands up, her entire system collapses." I swallowed hard
because fighting back meant something terrifying. It meant facing her again, revisiting the pain, risking more loss, more stress, more emotional damage. But walking away would mean losing everything anyway. That night, I sat alone in my room holding the house keys again. But this time, they didn't feel heavy. They felt like a responsibility, a promise, a symbol of everything I had fought for, everything I refused to let her take. For the first time since the betrayal, a new emotion replaced the despair inside me. Not hope, not confidence, not yet, but something powerful, something sharp, something steady. Determination. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I hired a lawyer and officially filed my response to her claim. It was the first move in what would become the most intense battle of my life, because Sarah wasn't just going to walk away. She was going to fight back, harder, dirtier, more aggressively than I could ever imagine. And what she did next would push me to my absolute breaking point.
The day I hired the lawyer, I expected to feel stronger. Instead, I felt terrified. Because making it official meant one thing. This wasn't just emotional anymore. It was a legal battlefield. And Sarah was no longer just someone who betrayed me. She was now my direct opponent. My lawyer, Mr. Khalid, was calm but brutally honest. He read through the documents slowly, his expression growing more serious with each page. Finally, he looked up at me and said words that made my chest tighten. "This will be very difficult to win." Not impossible, but difficult. And the way he said it told me exactly how serious the situation was. He explained that Sarah had built a very strong legal position. She had records showing she handled finances, emails proving joint decision-making, contracts signed under both our names. From a legal perspective, she didn't look like a criminal. She looked like a co-founder claiming her share. And that made everything incredibly complicated. "But she stole the money," I insisted, my voice trembling. Mr. Khalid nodded slowly. "Yes," he said, "but proving theft legally requires evidence of intent." That single word echoed in my mind, intent, because that was exactly what Sarah had hidden so carefully. She never wrote anything explicitly illegal, never admitted wrongdoing, never left obvious proof. Everything she did existed in gray areas, and gray areas are where cases become almost impossible. The next few weeks became the most exhausting period of my life. I was constantly gathering documents, reconstructing timelines, digging through old messages, searching desperately for anything that could prove she planned the betrayal. It felt like trying to solve a puzzle where half the pieces were missing. At the same time, Sarah's legal team began sending aggressive responses, cold, professional letters filled with accusations. They claimed I had mismanaged funds, that I had excluded her from decision-making, that I was trying to illegally deny her rightful share. Reading those words felt surreal, like reality itself was being rewritten. But the worst part wasn't the legal stress, it was the psychological pressure. Because Sarah didn't stop at the courtroom, she started attacking in other ways too. Subtle, calculated, cruel. First came the anonymous online reviews, negative posts about my business, false claims from former clients, messages warning others not to work with me. It was clear someone was trying to destroy my reputation completely, and I knew exactly who. Then came the phone calls, silent calls at night, numbers that disconnected when I answered, sometimes multiple times in a row. It created a constant sense of anxiety, like I was being watched, like I was never truly alone. One evening, something happened that shook me deeply. I returned home to find a plain envelope slipped under our front door. No stamp, no name, just my address written in black ink. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a single photograph. It was a picture of my house, taken from across the street, and on the back, written in pen, "Nice place, would be a shame to lose it." My chest tightened with fear instantly, because this wasn't just legal pressure. This felt like a threat. I didn't tell my parents. I couldn't. They were finally living peacefully again, laughing more, sleeping without worry. I refused to drag them back into fear, so I carried the terror alone, again. That night, I called Daniel. My voice was shaking. "I think she's watching me." There was a long silence before he replied quietly. "She always escalates when victims fight back." The calmness in his voice somehow made it worse, because it meant this was expected, planned, routine. "Why is she doing this?" I whispered. Daniel's answer came slowly. "Because fear is her strongest weapon." He explained something that changed my perspective completely. Sarah didn't just rely on legal tactics, she relied on psychological warfare. If victims became scared enough, they gave up, dropped cases, walked away, and she won without ever needing a court decision. For the first time, I realized something terrifying. She wasn't just trying to win, she was trying to break me completely, mentally, emotionally, so I would surrender on my own. And slowly, it was working. I stopped sleeping properly. Every noise outside made my heart race. Every unknown message made my hand shake. I began checking locks repeatedly, looking over my shoulder constantly, living in a state of quiet panic. My work suffered. My focus vanished. Even simple tasks felt overwhelming. The confidence I had once built my business on started crumbling again, and the worst thought returned, the one I had fought so hard to silence. Maybe I should just give up. One night, the pressure finally became too much. I sat alone in my room staring at the legal documents spread across my desk. The photograph of my house lay beside them, a silent reminder of everything at stake. I felt exhausted, drained, broken. For the first time since starting the fight, I seriously considered surrendering, dropping the case, letting her take what she wanted, just to end the constant fear. Because what was the point of winning if I lost my peace completely? But then, something unexpected happened. My mother knocked on my door again. She walked in quietly, holding a cup of tea. She sat beside me without saying anything. Then she placed her hand gently over mine and said words that pierced straight through my despair. "You don't have to tell me what's wrong, but I can see you're fighting something. And whatever it is, you are stronger than it." I felt tears filling my eyes instantly, because in that moment, I realized something important. I wasn't just fighting for money, or a house, or a business. I was fighting for the life I had built for my family, for the peace they finally had, for the future I refused to let someone else destroy. That night, for the first time since the betrayal, I made a promise to myself. I would not surrender, no matter how hard she pushed, no matter how long it took, no matter how scared I felt. But what I didn't know yet was that Sarah was about to make her most dangerous move, a move that would escalate this battle beyond legal documents and into something far more personal. Because 3 days later, my lawyer called me with news that made my blood run cold. Sarah wasn't just fighting me in court. She had filed criminal allegations against me. The phone call from my lawyer came like a punch to the gut. "Mariam," Mr. Khalid said, his voice tight, "she's escalated. This isn't just a civil claim anymore. She's filed criminal allegations against you." I froze. Criminal? What kind of allegations? He sighed, and I could hear the weight in his words. "Fraud, embezzlement. She claims you transferred company funds to personal accounts without consent. She's requesting an immediate investigation." My stomach sank. My mind spun. I had spent the last 2 weeks carefully building my defense, documenting everything, gathering evidence, reconstructing the entire history of the business. And now, it felt like the floor had been ripped from under me. The world outside seemed to stop. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my hands shaking. This was bigger than money, bigger than the house. If these allegations stuck, it could ruin my future entirely. Criminal charges could mean jail, financial ruin, and public humiliation. My parents, the house, all my sacrifices, everything was at risk. And I knew one thing with absolute clarity. Sarah had planned this. This wasn't desperation or an emotional reaction. This was a strategy. She knew exactly how to strike fear into her victims. And now I was living the consequences of her next move. I tried calling her. 10 times, 20 times. Every call went straight to voicemail. Her digital presence had vanished completely. It was as if she had evaporated into thin air, leaving me alone in a storm of accusations and fear. The next morning, I got a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging, stop fighting, or you'll regret it." No name, no signature, just the words. I felt a wave of panic unlike anything I had experienced before. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a coincidence, maybe it wasn't her, but deep down, I knew it was Sarah. It had to be. I couldn't tell my parents. I couldn't. They were already worried enough about the house, about the bills, about keeping our family afloat. I couldn't let them know that someone was now trying to drag my daughter into legal hell. So I carried the weight alone. Again. I spent days in front of my laptop, frantically going through emails, messages, invoices. I had to reconstruct every transaction, every payment, every client interaction. I had to prove beyond doubt that every cent I had spent or moved was legitimate. Every single file had to be airtight because one mistake, one missing document could destroy me. The pressure was unbearable. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. Every sound made me junk. Every notification made my heart race. I started sleeping with the lights on, checking locks repeatedly. Even stepping outside felt dangerous. And then it got worse. I started receiving strange emails from people claiming to be former clients. Some claimed I had scammed them. Some claimed contracts were incomplete. Every email, every message seemed to validate Sarah's claims. It was psychological warfare on top of legal warfare. And I realized that this is exactly what she wanted. Fear, paranoia, isolation. She wasn't just attacking me in court. She was attacking my mind. One night, Daniel called again. "Mariam, you're not alone," he said softly. I swallowed hard, trying to hold back panic. "I don't know if I can handle this," I whispered. "You have to," he said firmly. "She only has power over you if you let her. Don't give her the satisfaction of seeing you break." I wanted to believe him. I tried. But the weight of criminal allegations, the fear of losing my house, the constant anxiety, it was crushing me. Then something happened that almost broke me completely. A message appeared on my voicemail. It was Sarah. Her voice was calm, smooth, ice cold. "Mariam, you should have stayed quiet. Now you're playing in dangerous territory. I don't just take money, I destroy lives. Don't test me." The line went dead before I could respond. I sat frozen. This wasn't just intimidation anymore. It was a direct threat. And I realized with a sinking heart that Sarah had been planning this escalation for months. She wasn't done with me. She was methodical, deliberate, and ruthless, and she wasn't going to stop until either I surrendered everything or my life completely unraveled. For the next week, I barely left my room. I met with my lawyer daily, prepared documents, filed evidence, tracked every transaction. Every meeting felt like a countdown to an inevitable disaster. Yet something inside me refused to break completely. It was then, in the middle of one long night, that I remembered something Daniel had said weeks ago. Her biggest weakness is her ego, he had warned. She underestimates people who refuse to fear her. The words echoed in my mind as I stared at the photograph she had slipped under my door months ago. Her arrogance had always been her weapon, but maybe, just maybe, it could become her weakness. I made a decision that night. I would not hide. I would not back down. I would not let Sarah control my life, my home, or my future through fear. And more than that, I would fight not just for myself, but for every other person she had ever targeted. Because I realized something I hadn't understood before. This wasn't just about money or betrayal. It was about justice. It was about proving that no one, no matter how cunning or ruthless, could manipulate a life built with sacrifice and hard work without consequences. But as I was about to take my first steps into this battle, something happened that made my blood run cold. A knock at the door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I froze. My parents were asleep. The street was empty, and for a moment, I felt that same chilling fear I had felt the night I first received her threatening photograph. Someone was outside. Someone was watching, and I knew in my heart exactly who it was. Sarah. The 3 knocks echoed through the quiet house, each one making my heart pound harder. I stayed perfectly still, listening, every nerve on edge. The house felt suddenly enormous and empty at the same time, every shadow stretching unnaturally across the walls. I wanted to scream, to call my parents, to run, but something told me that would only escalate things. Slowly, I crept to the door and peeked through the peephole. No one. Just the dim street light casting a long shadow on the pavement. I exhaled shakily and stepped back. But then I noticed it. A small envelope tucked just under the door. My hands trembled as I picked it up. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It was typed. No handwriting, no signature. It simply read, "You're running out of time. Stop fighting, or your house, your family, and your business will pay the price." I sank into a chair, clutching the note as if it could somehow protect me. The fear, the anger, the helplessness, it all came rushing back at once. Sarah hadn't just infiltrated my business, she had infiltrated my life, my home. She knew I was vulnerable, she knew my family relied on me, and now she was threatening everything I had built. I thought about my parents sleeping upstairs, completely unaware of the danger looming outside. I couldn't let them see my fear. I couldn't let them bear this burden. So I did the only thing I could think of. I called Daniel. "Miriam," he said immediately, his voice calm but urgent. "I've been expecting this escalation. Are you okay?" I don't know," I admitted. She's threatening my house, my family." There was a pause on the line. Then he spoke slowly, almost like he was forcing himself to choose his words carefully. "Good. That means she's getting impatient. That means she's starting to make mistakes." I stared at the phone. "Mistakes?" "Yes," he continued. "Her whole strategy relies on fear. The longer you hesitate, the stronger she believes she has control. But if you act, if you expose her tactics publicly, she can't maintain the illusion anymore." Daniel outlined a plan. We would document everything, every email, every threat, every message, every client interaction, every financial record. We would compile it into an airtight file for my lawyer and law enforcement. And we would create a digital trail showing Sarah's calculated manipulation over years. It was risky, very risky, but if successful, it could finally turn the tables. That night, I stayed awake, feverishly collecting files and screenshots, cross-referencing emails and payment histories. Hours passed, and the exhaustion threatened to overwhelm me. My hands were raw from typing, my eyes burned from staring at the screen. And yet, there was a new kind of adrenaline running through me. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of control. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I froze. Then I saw the message. "I see what you're doing. Stop now or face the consequences." My heart skipped, but now, instead of fear, a quiet resolve replaced it. I typed back carefully, thinking through every word. "I will not be intimidated. Your games are over." I hit send before I could reconsider. The next morning, I went outside cautiously. The street was empty, peaceful, almost unnervingly so. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on me. I walked to my car and noticed something under the windshield wiper. A USB drive. I hesitated, staring at it. This could be a trap, malware, something to destroy my systems. But I also knew it could be the evidence Daniel mentioned, a direct window into Sarah's network. I took a deep breath and inserted it into a secure offline computer. Inside were dozens of files, financial spreadsheets, chat logs, screenshots, and recorded calls. Every document confirmed what Daniel had warned me. Sarah had orchestrated this pattern of betrayal for years. And worse, there were names. Other victims, other co-conspirators. It was more than a personal fight now. It was exposing an organized pattern of fraud. That night, I met Daniel in person for the first time. We sat in a quiet cafe, laptops open, documents spread across the table. "This is it," he said, pointing to the files. "This is everything you need to build a case. Every client, every transaction, every message. It's enough to crush her legally and publicly." I felt a shiver run down my spine. "Are we ready?" I asked. He looked at me, eyes serious. "Are you ready to face her? Because once this goes public, there's no turning back." I nodded. I had been running in fear for weeks. I had been haunted by messages, threats, and the shadow of her betrayal. But now, I understood something vital. Sarah's power came from my silence, my hesitation, my fear. And if I refused to be silent, she had no control. We began our coordinated strike. First, a detailed report to the authorities exposing the fraud and criminal tactics. Second, we contacted affected clients, letting them know what had been happening and warning them of her schemes. Third, we prepared public documentation, blog posts, videos, social media updates, carefully framed to reveal the truth without endangering ourselves legally. The next days were a blur. Sarah retaliated immediately. Emails flooded my inbox, threatening legal action, claiming slander. Anonymous calls, strange sightings near my neighborhood, attempts to intimidate me and Daniel. But we stood our ground. Every move we made was documented, every threat was logged, and slowly the tide began to turn. Then, 2 weeks later, we received news that changed everything. The authorities had opened a formal investigation against Sarah. Her pattern of fraud, threats, and manipulation was now documented. Other victims had come forward. Her network of co-conspirators was being traced. And most importantly, her criminal allegations against me were being reviewed with extreme scrutiny. For the first time since the betrayal, I allowed myself to breathe. It wasn't over. The legal battle would continue. The tension would remain high. But Sarah's control over my life was slipping. That night, I sat in my living room holding the house keys once again. This time, they didn't feel heavy. They felt like a symbol of endurance, a reminder that even after being betrayed, threatened, and nearly broken, I could rise again, because the person I trusted most, myself, had never left. And in the darkness, I made a promise. No one would ever take my peace again. No one. Not Sarah, not fear, not even despair. But what I didn't know yet was that Sarah had one final desperate move left, one that would test my courage, my strategy, and my willpower to the absolute limit. The night was quiet, too quiet. After weeks of chaos, threats, and sleepless nights, I finally felt a moment of clarity. That I knew better than to let my guard down completely. Sarah had always been strategic, patient, and meticulous. If she had been defeated legally so far, it was only because we had anticipated her moves. I couldn't underestimate her. That morning, I received an email marked confidential from Daniel. Miriam, she's desperate. She knows you're close to exposing her network. Expect one last attempt to intimidate you personally. I sat in stunned silence, reading the message repeatedly. Her desperation meant she was dangerous, but it also meant she was predictable, and predictable was something we could prepare for. I spent the next several hours reviewing every piece of evidence we had gathered. Financial records showing clear manipulation of accounts, chat logs proving coordination with accomplices, screenshots and emails documenting threats, testimonies from victims she had targeted in the past. The deeper I went into the files, the more I realized the scale of what she had done. Sarah wasn't just a deceitful business partner. She had perfected a system of predatory behavior, exploiting ambition and trust, breaking people emotionally, financially, and legally. But as I worked, a strange feeling began to settle over me. Strength. Weeks ago, I had felt powerless, broken, on the verge of surrendering everything. Now, I felt control. I was no longer reacting to fear. I was responding strategically. Every move I had made was deliberate, every action calculated to dismantle her network, protect my family, and reclaim my life. Daniel and I coordinated with law enforcement to arrange witness statements and testimonies from former victims. We filed formal complaints exposing fraudulent activities and threats. We made a timeline of every betrayal, highlighting patterns of calculated deception. The legal team worked tirelessly to ensure that Sarah's claims against me were systematically dismantled. Meanwhile, Sarah tried to escalate in small, desperate ways. Threatening phone calls, anonymous letters, even attempts to intimidate clients and collaborators. But each attempt only strengthened our case. Every message, every threat, every manipulation became evidence. And as months passed, the tide turned. Then came the moment that changed everything: a court hearing. The room was tense, filled with lawyers, witnesses, and the faint hum of anticipation. Sarah arrived, composed and confident as ever, her gaze sharp, calculating. She was the same woman who had betrayed me, who had tried to destroy my business, my reputation, and my peace. But now she faced the full weight of the evidence. As the judge reviewed the files, testimony after testimony painted a clear picture. How she had gained trust, how she had manipulated financial systems, how she had threatened and intimidated victims. Every carefully laid plan she had executed for years was exposed, and every time she tried to interject, to twist facts, the evidence spoke louder than her words. When it was finally my turn to speak, I felt a strange calm wash over me. I told the story of betrayal, not with anger, not with tears, but with clarity and strength. I described the patterns, the manipulation, the emotional toll. I spoke about the hours, days, and months I had spent rebuilding, documenting, and preparing to reclaim my life. And when I finished, the room was silent. Not silence of boredom or indifference, but the silence of truth acknowledged. The ruling came 2 weeks later. Sarah was found guilty of fraud, manipulation, and criminal intimidation. Her claims against my business and house were completely dismissed. The court ordered restitution for victims she had defrauded over the years. And most importantly, she could no longer contact me or any of my family members. The relief was overwhelming. For the first time in months, I slept without fear. For the first time, I could walk through my house without checking locks obsessively. I could smile freely again. But the experience left a permanent mark. I had learned painfully that trust is fragile, that ambition can make people vulnerable to predators, and that not everyone who supports you has pure intentions. Yet, I also discovered something vital: resilience. I learned that even in the face of calculated betrayal, fear, and intimidation, strength can be found in preparation, strategy, and self-belief. I realized that standing up for yourself is not just about defending possessions or money. It's about defending your life, your peace, and your dignity. I also realized the importance of community. Daniel's support, the courage of previous victims, the guidance of my lawyer, none of it would have mattered if I had tried to face this alone. Sometimes surviving betrayal isn't just about fighting back yourself. It's about building a network of allies who can see what you cannot when fear clouds your vision. A year later, I look back on that period with a mixture of emotions: fear, anger, pain, but also pride. Because I survived, because I reclaimed everything that was rightfully mine, because I learned the difference between naive trust and earned loyalty, and because in the end, I discovered the most important truth of all: no one can take your life unless you let them. I also learned to forgive, not Sarah, not for what she did, but myself, for trusting too easily, for giving so much without questioning, for letting fear take hold before I realized my own strength. Forgiveness allowed me to move forward without bitterness, to rebuild not just my business, but my life with lessons that would never fade. Today, I run my business confidently. I pay it forward by mentoring young entrepreneurs. I share my story openly so others can recognize manipulation, trust wisely, and protect themselves. And most importantly, I live with peace, not fear. Because life is not just about success, it's about resilience, it's about integrity, and it's about the courage to face betrayal and come out stronger on the other side. If there's one lesson I hope you take from my story, it's this: betrayal can break you, it can shake your world, it can make you question everything, but it cannot define you. Your strength, your courage, and your ability to rise again, that is yours alone. The house is mine, the business is mine, and my peace, that is untouchable. I survived, and so can anyone who has been betrayed.